Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, a big and furry bovine. And, well, we came off a football weekend and we've come off a real bender for the Cavaliers. Today, we'll be talking about what's wrong with the Cavaliers and maybe what can be done to help them out at this point, what the weaknesses are of the team, and how tonight's game with the Detroit Pistons might end up looking like. Before I get into the Cavaliers, I just want to point something out. I mean, the weekend games, I would like to be erudite, and that's erudite is an SAT word, but I wish I could be well spoken about both games. But the fact is, there was a massive internet outage in the greater Tampa, Florida area that affected and blanketed my area down here as well. And literally, I was able to see one half of the second game and not the thrilling finish of the game, if it was thrilling. I did watch the Commanders go down the shitter, which I figured would happen, but I was hoping they could pull something off. But obviously, can't give up 55 points and win. You can't turn the ball over like that. Can't do it, and that's really the recipe of failure in the league. And what the Browns are so good at is turning the ball over. And you wonder why I'm not jumping up and down about Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston or any, I want a quarterback based on the lack of talent that we have on the team who just doesn't give the ball to the other team. So that's that. The other thing I'm noticing is the anger that pervades everything on social media, including the Kansas City Chiefs, and that the Kansas City Chiefs are the harbingers of hatred in the NFL. I've never seen more fans angry about nothing. It's really quite amazing. I'd like to tell you that there's a reason for it, but there really isn't a reason for it. It's just more hate and anger. And what I will tell you, and I'll get into this later in the program, is it's interesting to see where people's talking points are in places like Twitter, and where they're coming from, and how similar they are based upon political views and also just personal views. And it's an interesting time that we're living in. But let's get to the Cavaliers. Tonight's opponent are the Detroit Pistons, which makes it interesting because JB Bickerstaff's team is 23-22. He's gotten that team turned around and playing pretty good basketball. They've been a little uneven this year, starting at 9-15, then going 12-4 in their next 16, and 2-3 in their last 5 games. But the thing is, the 2 wins were against Atlanta and Houston on the road, who, yes, they may have been sleeping, but the fact is they beat Houston in Houston, something that the Cleveland Cavaliers couldn't do in either Houston or Cleveland. What kind of team are they? It's really kind of an interesting thing because their pace is not tremendous. But they do score a lot of fast break points. They're third in the league in fast break points per game, but by no means do they play an up and down, run 'em, gun 'em kind of game, because that's not really what JB Bickerstaff does. They can force turnovers into fast break points. They're even not great anywhere. They're 15th in points scored per game and 16th in points allowed. That puts them right dead square, kind of in the middle. They turn the ball over quite a bit if the Cavs are playing defense. They're ranked 24th in turnovers, and they're ranked 26th in getting to the free throw line. So it's not like they are getting to the line the 42 times that occurred in the last game that the Cavaliers lost, and the team that they lost to. 42 or 45? forget what the number was. It was in the 40s that they went to the free throw line. Part of it was because of an intentional foul thing that backfired on Kenny, but he kept putting Steven Adams to the line. It looked like a good idea in the first couple of free throws, but after that, man, it was nothing but net, and then everything kind of died from there. As far as their team is concerned, Cade Cunningham is the undoubted leader of that team, averaging almost 25 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, and 9.5 assists per game. He's a 46% shooter from the floor and 37% from three-point land. So he's the guy who's important. And he's in the 98th percentile of usage. So he's on the floor a lot, which shouldn't surprise us because JB Bickerstaff is the coach. The problem for the Cavaliers is that he's 6'6". He's too big for Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill, or Ty Jerome. And Cade scored 33 the last time these two teams played. One break that the Cavaliers have is that Jaden Ivey, the number 5 pick from 2 years ago for the Pistons, who's averaging over 17 points a game, he's out with a broken fibula, nasty stuff. So that's that. So you're not going to see Jaden Ivey. The next guy to look out for is Malik Beasley, who shoots 40% for three. And the reason I bring him up is because he's their three-point guy. He's averaging 16 points per game off the bench, and he's nailing the threes at a 40% level, and three-point shots have been dropping against the Cavaliers defense. So there's that. Beasley averages playing 28 minutes a game. That might be going up because of the lack of Jaden Ivey out there. Tobias Harris is averaging almost 13 a game. Tim Hardaway Jr., 11 points per game. They're both 32 years of age. There's nothing in between for the Detroit Pistons. In a strange alignment of players, they have no starters between 24 and 31 years of age, which is interesting. They have a 23-year-old Cade Cunningham. Oscar Thompson is 21, and Jalen Durham, the center, and we'll be keeping our eye out on him because centers have been rebounding the hell out of the Cavaliers recently. Jalen Durham is only 21 years old. So that's who the opponent is. And I see we have Mr. Martin in the chat room. Okoro's out. LeVert, I'm beginning to wonder if they're trading LeVert because I don't remember him coming off the court with a wrist injury. I don't know. That's just me. Does anybody recall the moment when Karis LeVert hurt his wrist? He's missed an awful lot of games and has been the speculation of possible trade bait. And there's no reports coming out on exactly, it just says wrist, and it doesn't say anything more. So I don't know the seriousness of the injury. So I'm beginning to wonder whether he is in the midst of, and I don't know. Somebody maybe can tell me when LeVert actually got hurt and on what play it happened, because I sure as hell didn't see it on a telecast. That's for sure. And the tough thing for the Cavaliers right now is they're losing. And how does that affect you? Does that make you feel mortal? Because they felt immortal for a while. I'll tell you the bad news and I'll tell you the good news. The bad news is that they're losing, and they haven't been losing this year. But the good news is, in a game that they could have just given up on in the last game against Houston on a back-to-back, down 16 points, they kept clawing their way back. And they just lack certain components, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But they showed that they still had the ability to knuckle down and get back into a game and actually have a chance to win a game that they would have had no business winning. Just like they had no business losing the previous game to Houston with the 3 free throws and only one of them going through for Darius Garland. The question about all of this is, why is this happening to the Cavaliers? And there's a lot of stuff that goes together with this. For one thing, Evan Mobley just came back the last game, and he clearly was a little bit out of sync, and that will be the case when you're out for a number of games. But when you don't have the guy who's long and lanky, who's an awkward, herky-jerky scorer, like Karis LeVert is, who can be very hot and very cold at the opposite ends of the spectrum, but can provide points off the bench. And the type of defense that he would deliver would be a lot more beneficial when the Cavaliers are playing a zone defense. And unfortunately, that's what the Cavaliers have been forced to do more lately, and that's where the problems begin. Now, I don't know how many people who are watching the program right now who are either in the chat room or just casually watching this, or, the people who will be watching, the archive of this. How many of you have actually played basketball and understand the mechanics of a zone defense? I'm not going to sit here and go over it with you at tremendous length, but what it boils down to is the known way of beating a zone is quick passing, and the sure way of getting hurt is holding on to the ball. Usually, men will flash into the paint or up and high in the middle, take a pass, and then that leaves them the opportunity to throw the ball to either wing for open shots because the court gets compressed in a zone defense. And the thing that's good about a zone defense is it can be a really good change of pace. The problem with the zone defense is, A, it leaves shooters open from the outside if it's not played really cohesively well. But the main problem is it fucks up your efforts to rebound the basketball. And this is a huge thing. And Jason, I mean, this is what everyone is talking about. With Jared Allen and Evan Mobley in the game at the same time or playing in the same game, that's one thing. But when Jared Allen is left on the court by himself, it ain't happening. Cavaliers are getting pushed around. But when you're forced to play George Niang for the amount of minutes that they're playing him, two things happen. He'll hit some three-point shots for you, but his defense is atrocious. He was negative 17 in 18 minutes in his last game. And that's when he's hitting shots, for God's sakes. He's slow, he has no verticality, and he can't get rebounds. And he's not quick off the ball or off the ground because he's overweight. But Sam Merrill is the same way. He's not overweight. Sam Merrill is putting all of his effort into defense. He's lost his shot. And to make matters worse, he's not a rebounding player. He can be literally pushed out of bounds with a toothpick. And that becomes real problems. As far as LeVert and Okoro not being right since injuries, well, I haven't seen LeVert since his injuries, so I can't tell you that. But Okoro, as far as he's concerned, when you have a sprained AC joint and you come back too soon, that's what happens. You saw that his shot was messed up and he can't play. So, and it's going to be a while because when you're dealing with sprains and you re-aggravate injuries, they're going to sit him for a protracted period of time. But even with that said, Okoro is not, he's a physical enough player when he's playing defense against guys his size. And sometimes he's asked to do more than that. But offensively, he was shooting threes the best in his career, but he still hesitates to take those threes, although he was getting a little bit better about that this year. But his tendency is when he gets sped up that the arc on the ball goes, the shot becomes flat. And it's very similar to what we're seeing with Sam Merrill, which is the mechanics are sped up. The thing about Okoro, he was so wide open in the beginning of the year because of the concerns of other teams with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland penetrating and shooting floaters, then backing up and hitting threes. They were putting a third, man kind of roaming around to make sure that those players just couldn't get into the paint at will. And that forced them to give the ball up. And guys like Okoro would be standing there wide open. And he could, just like Mobley, as far as that goes, and just stand there, view it, and shoot it. But when he speeds up the mechanics, forget about it. Same thing's true of Merrill. And now even wide open look, Sam Merrill, his head is kind of cuckoo right now. Opportunities are there, but he's not making the shots. And he's not a good enough defensive player. God only knows he tries hard, but he's not a good enough defensive player to overcome the fact that his shot is completely off. And again, everybody has a thought, for the first X number of games, it was working. And it's all dependent on a couple of things. One is team health. One is rebounding the basketball and having a balanced roster. And the two guards in the backcourt who are undersized guards, I know what the general belief is as far as what works in the NBA, but it was working. And the fact that it's not working now might tell us a few things. One, for example, is that the Cavs, I guess you would call them the special teamers, the bench players, they were contributing in spots and were, in many cases, guys like LeVert and Niang and Merrill, they were part of these avalanches that were burying teams. However, when the shot goes away, that becomes a problem. The biggest problem, and the reason they lost the last game to Houston after they came back, is in the critical moments in the last 2 minutes of the game, they could not get defensive rebounds. And the Amen Thompson was killing the Cavaliers, and he was just crashing the boards 100% of the time. I mean, if Cleveland would have gotten any of those rebounds, they probably would have had an easy, fast break going over the midcourt line because they were just sending everybody to the boards. And the Cavaliers could not, they were deflecting passes, not getting to the ball because they lacked foot speed. You have Niang and you have Merrill in the game, and you're on a back-to-back, you're going to lack foot speed. But the real damage was done on the follow-ups, and that Amen Thompson was always literally hanging around the rim, and nobody was putting a body on him because we were forced to go small and we were playing a zone. And so the whole thing about zones are open spaces, and it doesn't matter where the open spaces are. They can be from behind the arc, or you can crash the boards, because in a zone defense, you can't put your body and block out a specific man. Harder to rebound when you're in a zone scheme. So that's what hurts the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. And I want to see less zone. I think everybody wants to see less zone. But the problem for the Cavaliers is, where are the points going to come from and who's going to be able to pick up the slack? And I mean, Ty Jerome has done a wonderful job, but you're going to end up playing him too many minutes, and that can be a problem just from his injury past. And just statistics in general, that he's not going to continue just bombardiering 3-point shots. And I've been very impressed with the way he's handled himself. He helps the team get turnovers out there. I actually like him better handling the ball than I do Karis LeVert. But Karis LeVert in a zone defense because of his wingspan, would deflect more passes. If you notice, the way that Ty Jerome disrupts is that reach around from behind and slapping the ball away. He just kind of gets that quick move around a player and knocks the ball from behind, and it really catches people by surprise. The bottom line is you got to play less zone because you got to put a body on people. Jalen Durham is 21 years old, and believe me, with the height that he carries, he can slam dunk every follow-up if you're not putting a body on him. And that will become obvious if we continue to play zone defenses. The other thing is, when it was working, the zone was taking teams by surprise. I think two things happened. One, playing zone too much. And I think the other thing is what was exposed as early in the season as the Atlanta Hawks, which is speeding up the game and pressuring the ball handlers, gives the Cavaliers difficulty, doesn't let them get into that fast passing offense. And what has happened, I'm seeing to the Cavaliers, is that there's much more dribble instead of getting into the sets and passing the ball quickly. Just Garland and Mitchell, and especially Mitchell, just dribble, 3-point shot, missed. Dribble into the paint, fadeaway, missed. Dribble down the paint, throwing it up, missed. That, and when you are driving down the paint like that and you miss a shot and you're on the ground complaining why you didn't get a call, 5 guys are running the other way. And that immediately gives up fast break points. So all of these things, and you know, this is the other thing, is this love fest with Cam Johnson, who's 28 years old and has never really distinguished himself, this year's stats, and he's playing for a nowhere team that is really trying to lose, quite frankly. We know about that in football. When you're playing to lose, guys like Cam Johnson are going to look great. Cam Johnson is not quick. Cam Johnson is not physical. Cam Johnson is not a rebounder. So again, there is no panacea for the problem in the Cavaliers right now, because you can't play Tristan Thompson extended minutes or any minutes as far as I'm concerned, because he's a complete liability offensively, and he's no longer a great offensive rebounder, and he's not tall enough to play in the tall weeds underneath the basket. And we've been seeing that the last couple of games. If I were to say what the Cavaliers need, I would pass actually on Cam Johnson, because the asking price will be too great. And you start looking for really large, big, physical backup center. Somebody who makes sure you don't get beat up on the boards, and somebody who might also have the ability to step behind the line and take a wide open three. Still stretch the court a little bit, but on the defensive end, anchor with some beef down low. Also, somebody who's not afraid to knock somebody on their ass if they have to do it. Now, the problem with Valanciunas, the calf, is that he has lost an incredible amount of verticality and foot speed. And not that it was great to begin with, but, he is really stuck in cement. That's what I would tell you. And he's old. And I think the Cavaliers need somebody more vital. Not that old. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect fit. And I'll be honest with you, there is no perfect fit. When you get to this point of the season and you played more than half your games and you're heading into the All-Star break ahead of you, and you have questions about your roster, the perfect Band-Aid is not going to be there to cover the wound that you have. So, Bronk is watching every game religiously in the UK. You have to play zone when Thompson's in. He can't move his feet. He's going to get blown by. Yeah, and I'll tell you something about Dean Wade. And I haven't heard. Maybe somebody in the chat room could tell me if you've heard anything about Dean Wade, because the last thing that Kenny Atkinson said, well, we're going to get with the physicians, and we're going to get some imaging done, and we're going to pray. Well, the thing with you could look funny at Dean Wade, and his bones will fall apart. He is not a durable player. Never has been. Never will be. And he's not the guy who will tough it out. He's not a guy who's going to play hurt. We know this from years of experience with him. And I know what fans say, oh, but statistically, we're a much better team when Dean Wade is in. Well, he is 6'9". All right. He's not a great rebounder, but he can put his arms up and he can stay in front of some of the people he's guarding. And he can get hot from 3-point and then have 3 games where he couldn't throw the ball into the ocean. But the big problem with Dean Wade, besides the erratic nature of his offensive game, is he's never healthy. And it's not just that he's not healthy. He misses a ton of games. When he's hurt, he doesn't come back. It's a long time. And then he's out of action and his shot's messed up. And so you insert him back. You never see his best basketball because he's never healthy. And you can't live with that. And it's not that I have anything against Dean Wade, but if you want to play championship ball, you got to have people who are out there. And if you can't, the way he got hurt was that he banged knees with Maxey in Philadelphia. Maxey was doing a blow-by down through the paint, and their knees cracked together. Didn't hurt Maxey, but down goes Wade. Down goes Wade. It's like instant, like a scrap heap, and he's gone. We haven't seen him since. So, what I can tell you is I've never heard more about Cam Johnson in my life. All right. I'm not saying he's a bad player. What I'm saying is he doesn't fix the problem. And maybe nobody is there to fix the problem. So this is going to be a challenge because we have too many small players on the floor. And all these players are 6'6" and taller from Detroit tonight. And you're going to see it again. It's a problem. You have to play man, and not just man, but aggressive man. And that means blocking out underneath the boards. That's what it requires. And if you're not throwing your weight around, or if you're slight and you don't weigh that much and you're a little light in the britches, you're going to get pushed around. It's a man's league. And the one thing we can say about the NBA, it is far more fast moving and athletic. A lot of those athletic players are people who are like, they may not be the greatest shooters in the world, but the guys who used to be like the 32% shooters from behind the arc are now like 35 behind the arc, but they can get to the basket so quick and slam dunk the ball. They might be 42 to 43% overall field goal shooters. And that's with teams like the Atlanta Hawks who are playing 500 ball. You will not find teams that are elite in the NBA that don't have a degree of athleticism. Don't take my word for it. Look at the Golden State Warriors, and look at the Miami Heat just flipping off a Butler and saying, yeah, you're suspended indefinitely. Fuck you. The reason they can do that is he doesn't offer them the physicality of today's game and the speed and athleticism. The teams that are really doing badly lack that way. And they're in slow motion. And that's the problem the Cavs have when you have guys who are not quick on the floor at the same time. And that would include George Niang at the top of the class, Tristan Thompson at the top of the class, and then the other guy would be Sam Merrill, who's slow of foot, and he likes to take charges, but he can do that when a man's running into him and he's willing to absorb the hit, but he can't keep his feet moving and stay in front of guys like that. And he's not big enough to keep guys away from the basket. it was really embarrassing watching Amen Thompson just taking his man into the paint and turning around, taking 6-7 foot flips right into the basket. I mean, there was nobody even challenging him. So if you have multiple guys, then you have even Ty Jerome who can't get off the ground. You have all these players in the game at the same time. That's it. They're going to crash the boards on you. They'll say, what the hell? If we miss, we'll just keep shooting. And that's kind of what happened. And it's been what's happening for the last couple of games. The thing is that people look at stats and they're very analytically oriented, but you have to take a look with the eyeball test and say to yourself, I'm looking at this team and what do they need, And when you have a guy like Şengün who's literally pushing you around, being allowed to do it, the first game was just horrendous. The second game, he was still getting his way down there against people. And, Jared Allen immediately picked up 2 fouls, which were pointless fouls because it just got him in foul trouble early on. You have to be able not just to take a swipe at somebody and try to rip their arm out of their socket, Kelly Olynyk style. You've got to be able to put your body down. And if Şengün is stronger than you are, you got to get into the weight room. That's the bottom line. Just, a guy without verticality like Şengün, he could head and shoulder fake all the fuck he wants. The reason he elbows people and hooks them with his elbow and digs them into people's ribs and tries to hurt them is because he couldn't deliver a shot without delivering a shot. That's the only way he's going to get that up. And if you're strong, you won't be moved. And this is why players and I'll go back to Kendrick Perkins, who was an enforcer, Charles Oakley back in the day. These guys were enforcers. You couldn't move them. They were tree stumps. And, Şengün is a guy who, if he can't back his man down, he's going to get more frustrated and he'll pull out a pistol and shoot the guy who's guarding him and probably get away with it in Houston. But, that's funny. Dinner Bell Mel, Kentucky's finest. No, you actually need somebody who's in shape, somebody who can just stand their ground. And, and as far as, Radu, Butler is done. This is the Pat Riley way. All right. It's like, don't put my back up against the wall. We're done with you. You're not important to us. You're 35 years old. Thanks for the memories. Fuck you. You're suspended indefinitely. They can't do anything with him. Nobody wants him. At one time, he was a really good defensive player and he could do a lot of things. But the thing is that Pat Riley's team is going nowhere this year. And he's not going to give up Jimmy Butler for nothing. And so might as well punish Jimmy Butler. And that's the way the coach is, Spoelstra is in Miami too. It's like, if you're handling things this way, we fucking hate you. We're done with you. And we don't care what you've done for the organization. You're out of here, but we're not going to let you go somewhere else. So sit and pine away. That's the deal. And that's a zone defense, when and plus it's an aberration in the sense that Phoenix was only, as I recall, a 34% 3-point shooting team, and they were knocking everything down. Every team can get hot. These guys are professionals. But when nobody's standing next to them, it's a hell of a lot easier to knock those shots down. And then as they loosen up, it's contagious. One guy starts it, another guy continues it, and that's how it works. But it starts with, the same process. A man like Şengün, who is a facilitator, running into the middle of the paint, getting a pass, and then kicking it out to somebody, and the ball moving and skipping that way. And then what you do is you take a guy like Amen Thompson, who is never going to be a primary offensive weapon, and you let your 3-point shooters gather behind the line, and you have him crash the boards at all costs. And you have another guy in the game at the same time, like a Steven Adams, who will do the same thing. He will just crash the boards. And I can't tell you how many rebounds we gave up that way. And can't win that way. And it's a challenge because we are challenged as far as the team we're putting out on the court. I never make predictions for NBA basketball games because so much of it is between the ears. You can be unbeatable and then you can't beat anybody. The good news, like I said in the beginning of the show, is that the Cavaliers showed the resolve to get back into the last game in Houston or in Cleveland against Houston. When the thing was all over, and they played with tenacity and energy. And despite the fact that that they were on a back-to-back, I've watched so many NBA teams that are losers who just tank the fourth quarter of games. And we've played more than one of them this season where they were short on the bench and they were playing us on the second end of a back-to-back. And they stopped playing in the middle of the third quarter. It was like the battery went dead and was drained. That's what it looked like. And let's see what Jason is saying. Oh, I see we got somebody. We got Broncola. Hi, Bronk.
I was helping Mrs. Bronk make me a jack of potatoes. So I'm going to be eating and muting. So
eating and muting. That's a good thing.
Eating and muting. But yeah, I mean, these games, man, we've been outplayed. I think that's the bottom line because we don't have enough people that can defend. And if we go into a zone, that's admitting the fact that we can't face up on people. So anyway, I'll let you get on.
I think that the teams will take a look at Cleveland and take a look at game films and saying this is what they haven't been able to correct. And part of it is that they're worn down physically. That's part of it. And part of it is that, teams are, the Sixers didn't look like the Sixers, and teams gain confidence when they see that what they're doing is working. Cavaliers' 3-point shots were not falling, and they have been during the course of this season, leading to all these wins and these cavalanches. It hasn't been there. The only cavalanches that, and funny enough, against Houston twice, they came back. They had runs to get them back into the game. And in the critical moments of games, you could see what Udoka was doing. He was just, it was either wide open 3-point shots, and if the balls caromed off the rim, it was just those big guys who were just getting to every loose ball.
Yeah,
and getting their hands on balls.
We wasted a game where Ty Jerome did an epic 8 out of 8 for 3-pointers, which has never been done by, I don't think, anyone before. I mean, it was just historic. But I mean, the game the other night, Wednesday night, you gotta remember that the Houston Rockets hadn't played a game since they played us the last time.
That's
and
right.
we were on a back-to-back against the 76ers. How in the hell the odds makers thought that the Cavs would be favored in that game at any point was just amazing to me. I mean, that was like giving out free money, I thought. So
yeah, anyway. and Captain, is and Atkinson's right. You can't rush the process. I just don't believe Karis LeVert could possibly be as hurt as this.
Well, just don't believe it. I don't know what's going on. I mean, but we need somebody out there with his skill set, whether it's him or whether it's somebody we pick up in a trade. We need somebody that can steal balls out of the passing lanes and run in transition and guard people heavily. We don't have that at the moment.
Yeah, and again, I wonder I can't help but think that he's on the trading block because nobody's talking about what his goddamn injury is.
Well,
They
that's
say
all
it's his wrist, but
speculation.
I don't know. And it's like there is no, now that I was reading a report that's saying due back on the 29th of January. So
Well, what
that's
does that mean? Is that after the trade deadline?
no.
No.
But
Okay.
but just the fact that that's what they're saying now, what started out being day to day is now being put off, and he's just out tonight,
Wow.
flat out, and
Hmm.
that's not the sign of a healing player. I when he's day to day, and then he's just out. Uh,
Yeah, you don't want to
and
be out.
yeah, so. And I think everybody believes that that is an ingredient of this team. It's one of the reasons why, you try to make your team better at the trade deadline, but not at the cost of the things that you've assembled and the chemistry that you've put
Yeah,
together.
absolutely.
It's a difficult thing.
I mean, we
And
spent the whole first part of the season getting by without having Max Strus, but now that we've got Strus, he is like a duplicate of Jordan Yang. I mean, he's not giving us anything different, but we got Levert and Okoro out at the same time, and they are effectively our defenders out there. And then with Wade out too, I mean, you got no Opa stopping teams under 100.
well,
You know,
Struess was hurt in the beginning of the year, couldn't play. Then he came back and was, not
not that
up to
good.
par.
Yeah.
Then things started getting better, but with the defensive stances that teams are taking with the Cavaliers right now, there's too much dribble, dribble, dribble. I mean, if you're, and I'm going to tell you, Max Struess's strength is his motion. It isn't his speed and it isn't his height. It's an offensive, never stop moving Kyle Korver-esque kind of thing. That's what he does. But when you have ball dominant dribbling going on, he can run from here to Timbuktu, but he's never going to see the fucking ball.
Yeah, he's never going to get the ball. Absolutely, he never does. I mean,
So, it really takes away his greatest strength. But I'd be the first to admit at 6'5", he isn't going to get rebounds. We just, we have to have our two bigs and rotate them a fair number of minutes. And Jared Allen cannot allow people to just keep pushing him out of bounds and then falling on the floor and looking like this at the referee, like he's looking for help. It's
yeah,
like
well,
you
you're not going
gotta,
to get it.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
you're
gotta
not
do
going to get
better
it.
than that. So we'll see what happens in the game tonight. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today is it isn't about the football games. I don't really give a shit about the outcomes of the games. I'd say scoring 55 points in a game is pretty impressive from a team that, was ridiculing the quarterback and saying that they really weren't scoring points, but they were gifted a lot of
Oh,
possessions
God,
because of
yeah.
turnovers. But and the rookie quarterback had his moments. Jaden Daniels had his moments.
Yeah, he's a fine player, but, we'll see next year. I mean, he sort of had the year that Stroud had last year.
Yeah,
So
you never know.
we'll see how he goes next year.
But here's and I'm going to just share a headline. The NBA needs new faces to lead a new generation of stars.
Well, duh.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Why is it that
Why is it?
teams today who are good at what they do are hated and reviled? Where was the hatred toward the
Tell me,
Golden
Mr.
State Warriors when Draymond Green was kicking people in the nutsack? Why this hate of the Kansas City Chiefs? I mean, to
There's a
me,
lot of that.
oh, I stopped looking at Twitter. I
There's a
stopped
lot of
looking
that.
at it because it's like it's people just whining and moaning about things, and it's pure hate. And I've come to a conclusion that it's not worth. I mean, if you want to see which way the wind is blowing, it's blowing from one direction. And it's hateful. And it's like, how do they decide who they love and who they hate. And how does that get figured out? How is Lamar Jackson the greatest quarterback in the league, and Patrick Mahomes is a gifted referee's favorite, fixed rigged quarterback? How do we come to that conclusion?
And frankly, they both get calls. I mean, I can think of loads of examples of Lamar Jackson getting.
But Lamar Jackson hasn't won a goddamn thing in 8 years.
Correct. Yeah.
So what makes him such a good guy, and what makes the Chiefs such bad guys?
Tell us,
and I can tell you one reason why the Chiefs are reviled. Let's see if you can think. When did the negativity really start?
Perhaps when Taylor Swift started dating Jason Kelsey, or whatever his name is, the guy from Cleveland Heights.
Yep. That's when it started. And that's what it is. Like so many other things that are going on, that people will take their wrath and anger. I mean, I understand the Deshaun Watson thing, but the funny part of it is the same people who were writing the horrible things about Deshaun Watson are the ones who are showing these pictures of Kareem Hunt's last walk out of Cleveland Browns locker room, and how we blew it by not bringing him back. And people, it's like, you can't be so stupid not to realize that the team that's surrounding Kareem Hunt is a Super Bowl team, and the team that Kareem Hunt would have gone to in Cleveland were a bunch of injured old men without a quarterback.
And only capable of winning one game a month instead of 3 or 4 a month.
You know, it's my feeling that you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth, but that's what people are doing.
People are doing that all the time. And in fact, you might as well join them, because it's hilarious. If you start joining them, then they wonder, well, what the fuck are you talking about? And then you say, well, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to understand what there is to hate. I mean, if a team like the Detroit Pistons with Bill Laimbeer, they were easy to hate. All right.
Correct.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are easy to hate because they play dirty football.
Yeah.
And the Ravens are right there with them. All right. They just are late hitters. They injure more players per year than any teams, any organizations in the league consistently year to year.
That should be a stat.
To hate those teams.
That should be a stat that is put up. Teams that injure other players, you know?
Well, what they get away with is remarkable. And for a lousy, shitty Steelers team to have gone as far as they did this year, and it was funny, I was watching that Art Rooney Jr. was saying that the priority is to re-sign Wilson or Fields, but not both of them. If you can't decide which one, then you don't have a quarterback.
No, and they're awful.
And you know, that's the funny part of this whole thing is
you put your finger on it though when you said Art Rooney Jr. Like at some point there's probably going to be an Art Rooney 3. Now as this ownership dilutes down to the grandchildren, they get more and more incompetent. Like look at the fucking Bengals. Look at all these other teams that pass down their ownership through some, like George Halas, and you know, there's any number. I mean, they should stop this fucking legacy ownership in the NFL. If the owner dies, then they should be forced, the estate should be forced to sell the team to somebody else.
David Talevsky, what do you want to add?
Oh, no, I just wanted to chime in, that's all.
Yeah,
I've been on a while.
Bing, bing, bing.
And I know you are one of the big proponents on, you know, the Twitter scene with the, you know, that the NFL's rigged and that Kansas City is blessed and this and that.
Well,
but
I don't know.
I want to ask
that. I just think the AFC sucks.
Yeah, I know that. I've read that too.
Yeah.
AFC does suck. I'll agree with that one.
I guess the thing that I can't understand through it all is there are teams right now in the NBA who are clearly the darlings of the league
Oh,
and have been every year. And if they have a marketable player, then they will rise to the top and start getting calls magically.
yeah.
And if they can create another great star, that's what their business is in the NBA, because they don't know any other way. That they're still doing the same thing they did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and 2000s. You know, and it went in a linear fashion. I mean, if you've been an NBA fan long enough, and a lot of people who watch this program are old enough to remember,
Oh God, yeah.
the 80s was the Magic Johnson,
Magic
Larry
and
Bird,
Bird,
the end of toward the end of
Jordan.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, through that period of time, and so they were beloved. There was Malone and Stockton, and there was MJ, of course, and anyone who played with MJ. That was going to be that team was going to be blessed with all kinds of you can't touch people without them going to the free throw line.
Yeah.
But you have the stars, and that's what people tune in. That's what generates the television audience, therefore the revenues. And that's the way they're thinking about things. And what they have now is a problem, because the players who may damn well be the most blessed players talent-wise are not where the NBA wants them to be.
Well, they will be
Wemby
at
being
some
in
point.
San Antonio
Yeah.
is not what the league wants,
Correct.
And you start looking at some of these young players, and the Magic, Banchero's been hurt and Wagner has been hurt, and they're getting back to full strength there. But if Banchero is the big star from there, and if Cade Cunningham is a star in the making, and suddenly the Pistons are 23 and 22 and they're playing 500 basketball.
Yep.
They're always keeping an eye out for those players. And a lot of them are just in the wrong fucking place. So they have to continue with Giannis in Milwaukee, and they got to continue with the Celtics, and they've got to continue with the Knicks, because, Brunson is supposed to be some great fucking thing. And to be honest with you, the Knicks are just the Knicks. They're just from the biggest city. That's all you can say about them. They're still pimping, LeBron a little bit, and it's like they're still doing business the way they did, 40 years ago, and they have to change their marketing plan. But there's more cheating going on in the NBA than there is anywhere, and it's all for the same reason now that the football league has started in the same direction. What names mean something to the audience? And the Chiefs, because of their run, and it was like Tom Brady and the Patriots, and every quarterback who, CJ Stroud last year for the Texans, the publicity machine would really get cranked up for these people. And Jaden Daniels this year.
He's getting it this year.
But looking for the next great, the next great, the next great. But it doesn't, all it does is people who were Cleveland Cavaliers fans when LeBron left became Golden State Warriors fans when Durant joined Golden State. I mean, it's horse shit. And a lot of people who probably are saying they're Chiefs fans didn't know the Chiefs from their back end, 10 years ago. Seriously.
Yeah.
They couldn't have cared less. People ride the bandwagon.
Well,
and
that's the way it is. I don't know how you change that.
No, you don't. But today the bandwagon is predicated on more than just achievement.
It's celebrity. It's being in State Farm commercials and stuff like that.
But it's also a political statement. And
true. Yeah.
And if you have players who have taken a pro stance on a certain thing, then that person is a player that you will start following. And it
You
was
either
never
love
like
or
that
hate.
before. We
Yeah.
never knew.
Yeah.
The only thing Michael Jordan knew was which casino he was going to go to after
Yeah, I
the
mean, I
fucking
don't think he
game.
ever uttered a political statement in his life,
Not at
Michael
all.
Jordan. I don't think he ever will either.
But and then if you're mired in Indiana or Cleveland or wherever, you're not going to get talked about anyway. But Cleveland will be talked about a ton when Deshaun Watson is brought in and he's having, legal problems. Then it becomes what I call a MAGA attack, and then the reaction to the MAGA attack is the lefties coming in with their kooky shit, and none of their takes make any sense because they're not predicated on realities of how good the team is, how good the player is. I don't give a damn what their stance is. If you hate every player who assaulted women in professional sports, then you would not be cheering for the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? You would not be. All right? You wouldn't be cheering for the Ravens. You wouldn't be. Or the Steelers. You wouldn't be. That's just the way it is. But it's so, people would just praise Ben Roethlisberger, and the guy was a serial female assaulter and got away with it.
Yep.
But he was a god. So, today the lines are drawn, and not in a good way. And, we'd like to talk about sports, but it kind of hurts when we're living in a country right now. I mean, I saw that ICE was going after a Mexican restaurant in Northeast Ohio. I was seeing that all over the goddamn timeline. And people that I know in Ohio who frequented that establishment, and they were good people. And there's the government hassling them because the worst thing you can be now is Mexican.
Well, I'll tell you a story. There's in England, there's a hamburger, like an upper level hamburger chain, like I don't know what the equivalent in America would be, like Applebee's, I don't know, called Byron Burgers. And what they did one time was that they had a staff meeting called at 9 o'clock in the morning, and everybody had to show up for this big staff meeting. And they brought and unbeknownst to the staff was the immigration people raided the place at 9:05 and arrested about 40 people.
Yep.
And somebody in the organization, ratted their own people out to the British authorities here, and that really ruined that chain because people boycotted and they couldn't get help. So now they're out of business.
Tariffs on everybody, Mexico, Colombia. You do whatever you want to do. Anybody of Hispanic, you come into office saying, we're sick and tired of the problem of Chinese goods being flowing into the United States, but you do nothing to stop Temu and to stop these, and you pardon, in essence, TikTok and who are utilizing that social media to gather information about people, and you don't do what you say you're going to do, and the Democrats don't do it either. They, if they're talking about, oh, we're going to really help people who are new in this country, what have they done? Well, economically, how have they made the country better for people who are foreigners? And how come you're not hearing about, some kind of ban on Haitians after this whole fucking campaign that we went through? Are they still eating people's dogs? I mean,
the other weird thing is that you never hear about Cuba anymore. Remember how America used to hate Cuba? Now you don't even hear about them. You don't hear about Nicaragua anymore. You don't hear about Venezuela hardly anymore.
Gotta have a boogeyman.
Yeah.
And both sides do it. The Democrats have their boogeymen and the Republicans have theirs. But I just want sports to be about sports. I don't want it to be about politics because the two things are separate.
Yeah, it's supposed to be entertainment. It's not supposed to be political. Sports is meant to be entertaining.
And you see, the Bills quarterback Allen trying to sneak in on a 4th down, and his back is turned sideways. The ball's in the wrong arm, and it doesn't cross the line of scrimmage. And they say he didn't cross the line of scrimmage, and half the world goes ballistic. It's another cheat for the Chiefs.
Well, I mean, how many times has that happened to Cleveland teams? I mean, I don't feel any sympathy at all for that, really.
Well,
No.
what I can tell you is there's going to be a day of celebration if the Chiefs lose the Super Bowl, and if they win,
I think the Eagles are the better team. I picked
They
the
are.
Eagles from way back weeks ago. So I'll be shocked if they don't win.
but they have to perform. They may have played their best game, a game early. You just don't know.
Well, it depends on their offensive line guys because they're down like to their practice squad guard and center at the moment. So, like we all predicted, you have 18 games, 17 game season, and your star players are all fucking hurt. This is what you get.
Well, and congratulations to Joel Bitonio, named to his 7th consecutive Pro Bowl. Whether he's going to be playing in Cleveland or playing any more at all, we will find out as we get closer to that season. The Cavaliers are an hour away from starting, and I'm going to get my fat ass off the air.
Well, can I add a few things in?
Sure.
Go.
First of all, to piggyback on Brunt's comments, I wouldn't consider Applebee's high caliber.
Well, I was trying to come up with an example, mate. I don't know what. What's a classy burger place in America?
I don't know if there really is, but Whataburger would be considered the better hamburger around the country, I think. But they're not.
This is a sit-down restaurant where you go in and you sit down. It's not takeaway food. It's a sit-down restaurant.
I've had good ones at Red Robin, but I don't know if that counts.
Red Robin. Yum.
Things don't translate between the two countries.
Another thing I would like to add, Moo, this is directed towards you, a bit of radio news that happened here locally.
Ooh.
So Salem is a company that operates a lot of Christian radio stations pretty much across the country. Well, they've sold out to the big man. They've sold out to the EMF. And no, not the one-hit wonder band, but the EMF that operates the...
Well, you're unbelievable. Was that their hit?
Yeah, you're unbelievable.
They operate that they operate that K-Love radio company, which pretty much means that there's no more local hosts, and now every station is broadcasting that same national stuff.
Well, there you go. That happened here in England. They got rid of all of our local stations, and everything's like
consolidation is the name of the game. I was reading an article because I'm already looking for airfares to get back to Ohio in April. Everything moves so damn fast. And the prices are going up for airfares because they're saying, the price of oil is going to go up. We have to protect ourselves. Well, why don't you protect yourself when the price of oil goes up? Fuck you. I don't want anticipatory inflation. But
that's what happens.
There you have it. But the other thing, trying to figure out what days you're leaving and when you're getting to where you're going.
You need a fucking PhD to figure that shit out.
The reason that the airfare prices are going up are the companies that are considered smaller companies. That would be Allegiant, Breeze, Spirit, if it's still in existence. I don't know, but they're smaller airlines,
Frontier,
regional
or whatever.
They're still around.
Who is?
Spirit is still around.
Okay, yeah, but they're the ones who are smaller market hubs. But the big three, which would be United, and I'm not going to be able to name them off the top of my head. Who else?
Southwest.
Southwest would be one of the hub ones. A discount airline. Delta would definitely be one, and there's one more. And those three, whoever the third one is,
American.
Yeah.
You know that those three companies are 97%
of the airlines. Yeah.
No, of the revenue
Oh wow.
of airlines,
The revenue.
97%. And what they were saying is that the smaller regional hub will have to sell out.
Yep.
And so those, we're not done until we got 100%. That's
Correct.
America.
Yeah.
It's like anything that's good for the consumer, fuck the consumer. Prices will go up. They'll have to sell. They'll make their money. And the big guys will shut down those airlines. And then you'll be forced to pay even more to fly on the big three airlines.
Yeah, and you'll have to fly through O'Hare every place you fucking go.
Yeah, it's just the way it works. So, yeah, as far as radio is concerned, it was all consolidated, and that's what they wanted. And that's
what they got.
Yeah, and so be it. I mean, but it's unfortunate because the quality of the product is, But I'd be the first to admit that radio is not exactly a primary communication method anymore. Go ahead, David.
Oh, can I ask you, did you actually get a chance to listen to those air checks that I sent you a while back?
I did, and I've been talking to one of my production directors. We're trying to track down all of the imaging that was done for CK105 in Flint, and I wanted to put together something for you so that you could hear some of the really off-the-wall shit that we were doing in the 90s, and and just how what's the word that you would use to describe radio today, like milk toast and antiseptic and all of the things that don't draw attention. You know what it's like? It's like listening to music in an elevator. That's what radio is like now. There's no humanity to it whatsoever. So, yeah, I'm going to try to get that together. We're trying to accumulate. I used to have this stuff. I'm searching through my house because I had some of this stuff on DVDs. And if I can find it, I will make some of these into MP3s and copy them down and see if I can ship those off to you somehow.
That's a lot of work.
David loves radio.
There are people that convert DVDs into stuff, and charge like, I don't know, $10, $20, $30, I don't know,
right,
for DVD. That would be easier to do than doing it yourself.
Or you just buy the stuff and do it yourself.
It's time consuming.
Yeah, it is time consuming, and let's see what I can find. But I got to get going. And thanks a lot, Bronk, and thanks, David, and thanks everybody for contributing to the show today. I appreciate it, and we'll be back again Friday with more. And hopefully, I'll have an idea of when I'm going to be back in Ohio.
Oh wow, it's happening soon.
Yeah, well, in the middle of April, and you got to do it this far out.
Wow.
That's the way it is. So thanks, and I will see you again Friday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.